Okay, cool. Okay, we'll get going here. Everyone, I'm going to stand here approximately, if that's okay for everyone. Great. What we're going to be just covering first here is a basic foundation of terminology. Really, what is BIM? I think we hear it as being this acronym out there. It's not always understood what it truly is. BIM is an interesting thing because it's building information modeling, and it's a borrowed concept. It's been in the aeronautical industry and shipbuilding for the last 30 years. You have, of course, early adopters were like the Frank Gehry's of the world. They were using software that was coming from France. Dassault Systems was making the software that allowed them to do some of the early wild forms that they were doing. But it was building information modeling. And it's funny that we're just now catching up. Our industry is. Granted, buildings they're a little bit different than cars or ships. We're not repeating the process over and over and over and making the same fender where every building is one off. So it's a little harder. Maybe that's why. They were just slow. Stuck in our ways. But the interesting thing about BIM really is the notion of a connectedness with real-world objects, representations. Of course, they're no longer two-dimensional. They're not flat. They're three-dimensional, and they have a real-world size, shape, representation. Certainly, it makes it easier to visualize, but it also helps us prototype the entire building once before we actually have to go out there and build it. Right? That's one nice thing. Secondly, is it's carrying a lot of data with it. It's the uniting of 3D representation and of a representation in the computer, but then also carrying all the data side with it, database. That's really what's happening under the hood of Revit. When you're doing those schedules, you're just extracting data. And that's the neat thing about, in your case, lighting fixtures. They're going to have lighting fixtures populating a model, but they carry data with them. What their type mark is, who the manufacturers, their cost, all of those things. And you can choose to extract that data at any point in time and in any way, shape, or form. It's phenomenal. And the computer, and the other interesting thing about BIM is that it is, in the case of Revit, a single model compared to AutoCAD, where we're externally referencing many models together, if you want to call them models. And it wasn't a single concept. You couldn't count all of your lighting fixtures at one time, generally, in a project, because you'd have to open up every XREF, count the blocks, or however you were doing it, or manually count it, which obviously, we're all human, and can make some mistakes. At least other people can, not. No, but the interesting thing about this uniting of the database and the 3D world and real world and representations of real world objects is that it does really appear to be the next step, and it is finally the building industries catching up with these other industries. I find that kind of fascinating. But the other thing that Revit is, so it's not only a building information modeler, and it functions on the premise of being parametric. And parametricism is a term that basically says geometry, two-dimensional or three-dimensional, can be controlled by numerical inputs. And we are starting to see that with dynamic blocks in AutoCAD. You're seeing the fact that you can take one block and you can make it grow or shrink and represent a variety of things. Revit really is all about that. Revit says, okay, we're going to have a recessed fixture, can light. Why not use the same geometry, but through a series of numerical inputs, control that size, shape, physical reality of that object? There's no good reason not to. So that's parametricism. Parametricism also comes into play when you can relationships are built in the computer. So relationships between, say, a lighting fixture and a ceiling. If that ceiling goes up and down, that lighting fixture should stay with it. So there's these premises of relationship. it can come to things like if you array things out. You know, if you want 20 of them, we can get the computer to actually maintain a relationship. You can click on that array at a different time and say, oh, I want it to be 22, or I want it to be 23, or respace that array. So it's this idea that you can control geometry through numerical inputs as well. In a schedule, you can change something that's in the model. Let's say you want to change a type of fixture in a given room. You don't have to go find it in the model. You can do it through a schedule if you can find it there. So it's nice. It's they call that a bidirectional connection between the schedules and then the actual geometries that are representing the model. So that's parametricism. And both BIM and parametrics, they're old concepts just finally making their way to us. And it's interesting. So it's a single model, of course, right? Revit is just one single model. The interesting thing about Revit is that you can slice up and look at that model as many times as you'd like to, and in as many different ways as you would like to. I mean, Revit's really in the single model concept. That's why you can count all your light fixtures at one time. It's all one file. It's large, but with our computing power that we're getting on the average desktop, you can actually handle a decent sized model. You can take that single model, and if it's a prototype, if it's a real representation of the real world object, we want to look at it different ways, right? We want to make plan cuts, we want to make section cuts, all of those things. In Revit, you can do that. You can do it as many different ways as you want to. Those of you who have been through the process before, maybe a floor plan. You want a floor plan maybe to sometimes represent itself different ways. In the case of, say, architecture, you'll want a furniture plan maybe, but you don't always want to see the furniture in every plan, right? But the furniture needs to be in the model. So the concept is yes, you can cut it up a variety of ways, but you're going to filter out model categories that you don't want to see. So in the case of, say, an architectural plan that does not want the furniture, you just tell that view, that slice of the prototype of the building, say, I don't want to see furniture in this view. That's really the concept behind it. As when you really see a big model coming together, oftentimes you don't want to see all the MEP items or things like that. So you have to filter those views to say, you are part of the prototype, but I just don't want to see that at this point in time. So, yeah, especially the idea of clash detection, things like that, they're up and coming. I still have yet to use that as a major piece of a project, beyond looking for structural components, hitting things like pipes, things to a much lesser degree lighting fixtures. But we should start thinking about it. Some of your lighting families have that in, and that's a nice thing too about building the prototype first, right? In computers, you can test this and see, okay, what are we running into? Hopefully anticipate those other issues. But AutoCAD and I always like to start off with, let's talk about AutoCAD similes. What are some of the similar things that we're going to be running into? Well, first and foremost is our families. Families are to Revit as blocks are to AutoCAD, but they are 100 times more useful, and they have a lot more that's happening. So a family, you may have a lighting fixture family of some sort. Let's just say a linear pendant. And as I was saying, it's parametric. It may be able to grow and shrink. It may be a 4-foot long section, maybe 8, maybe 16. And it may be the same geometry that's being driven by a numerical input, but it's going to carry a lot of data with it. Generally, that's all housed within that one lighting fixture family. So it's nice. So rather than it just being a block that you bring in and a 2D representation of that, it carries a lot of things with it. Nice thing about families is they're external to your project, meaning that you define them initially, but it's almost like they're an external reference of sorts, and that if you want to control it from a standardization standpoint, and I'm going to try to talk about standardization a lot in this, in standardizing things for your offices, you may start to find that you have a general body of fixtures that are standard for most of the projects that you're doing. Just a starting point. And you can, with every new Revit file that's started, you can have those families, their definitions linked back to some server location where you control all of this. At any point in time, those can be updated in a project. Or maybe you find in a project, if you have administrative rights, that we need to update this and change this and distribute it to all of the projects. We can do that. So a family is like a block, but it's not like imported. You know how you can redefine a block within a file? Or you can re-import that block and it redefines it. Like if you've defined the block another way and you re-import it, you can overwrite that definition in an AutoCAD file. Same kind of thing happening here.
So if you're sending out a drawing or a model, will those families still load in that model, or do you need to send families with it?
No, that's the greatest thing. So every Revit file, when it starts with a template, all the families that are in it are actually contained. They're native at that point, and it's their own version of that. So you may have linear pendants hanging out there on your server that are your standard, but then the linear pendant may be the same name and everything. It's defined in that project right then and there, and it's native to that project. Yeah, it's not like you have to bind all the families in and then send it out. That's one good thing about your template here is it is containing, majority of the generic fixtures that you'll utilize as your starting points for every project, and it's really carrying a lot of that basic lighting family data that you'll be needing to use. It's containing a lot of different things, your schedules, all of those things. It's that it's that single model concept that it's all packaged into one place. But that's a really good point. Thanks for pointing that out.
So to go back to that, so is there a setting that you can say that it either needs to link to our quote-unquote master families or to be independent, or how does
it happens automatically?
Okay.
Yes, it happens automatically. And it's something we'll have to build. We'll have to figure out where we want these individual kind of the defining versions of your fixtures to reside. We may just say that they reside in the template, and every time someone starts a new one. We'll get into that. You can tell a lighting fixture family to update itself from another location, even another project. Maybe someone found a way to, they redefined a certain lighting fixture family and you want to now use that in your project. You can transfer that over, overwrite your current version. Yeah, so it's pretty nice. But that's the whole idea, is that from an AutoCAD simile standpoint, families are probably the closest thing to a block. In Revit, you are going to be doing things. I'm actually going to turn to a session of Revit here just so I can start to demonstrate some of the tools, if that would be helpful. Just quick show of hands on like who's been in Revit, who's done a Revit project. Just to start that Revit project. Okay, cool. So 3 of 5. That's great. So for some of you, this may be your first time seeing the interface or actually opening it up. So that's good. Let's actually
have just a quick, on that respect though, there were significant changes in terms of the user interface between MEP 2011 to MEP 2012. Is that right? Was it
one more back, 2010?
Oh, and that's where the big change should be. So even, because I will say that one of the things I have not done yet is jumped into MEP 2012.
Cool.
And whether or not that made any big
No, sadly,
changes.
You want them making the improvements in real places of actual importance, and instead, they gave you one extra icon to set the view that it always opens on.
Fair.
Yeah, nothing else.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, the one big improvement is their attempt at cloud computing and how to handle geographical distances. That's actually coming in 2012. That's in here. I don't know enough about it yet, and I'm going to try to hopefully learn some more through you all, because I think that may be a good way to go. other improvements were relatively small. But so if you open up a session of Revit 2012, you get this nice splash screen. I think this is a good thing that we're seeing with a lot of softwares, be it Adobe, anybody who's really, Microsoft is actually surprisingly the one who's pushing software makers to go this direction. Same with ribbons, as everyone noticed, the Microsoft Office, I don't know about everyone else. It took me a little while to get used to that. I was not accustomed to it. Didn't like it at first, but now I'm not so bothered by it. Same thing happened with Revit. 2010, it switched over. It used to be an icon-based tool set like AutoCAD. Did you use the older version?
I started dabbling with it when it had kind of the icon set. And you're right, it is a big change to then go to the ribbon format.
Yeah.
But getting used to it now more and more. So.
Yeah, likewise. I actually really now prefer it. I mean, it's not too bad. But okay, so here we are. Splash screen. This is nice. It's going to show you all your past projects that you've done. Not all of them. I think it keeps a cache of 2 or 3. Depends if you can actually set that. But big thing here is the template that you start a project from. We're going to have it set up that you always start up the HLB template. We don't have that in place right now because we'll need to migrate around and actually set that up on each workstation. But you can tell it automatically which template to start from. You do that by going to the R icon. And I have this nifty little, can everyone see that when I click?
Yeah, the bubble.
Little bubble.
Yeah.
R pull down, new, and when I say fly out, I'm going to hang the new icon. There's a little arrow that is on the right there. And we're going to hit new project. The pop-up window is asking you for which template you're going to use. You won't have to go through this all the time. Normally you can just go to R pull down and hit new. It will automatically fire up the right template. But for right now, we need to go in and browse for our template. This is on the R drive.
So it's an the R drive, Revit. There's a Revit folder on that drive. And then there's another folder that says Revit training files.
Thank you. Revit training files and HLB template 2012. Okay, here's one thing. Always you want to know what version of Revit your architect is working in. You cannot say backward in Revit. So presumably everyone is on subscription. Software ownership doesn't make sense
so what
otherwise.
would you do if they're in like 2011 or 2010?
You have to work in an older version.
We carry, but if they have 2011, well, then they wouldn't be able to see our stuff.
We can use theirs.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to use
Correct.
I don't know how long we'll carry licenses, but I know that we carry both 2011 and 2012 currently. That'd be, how long are we planning on carrying the older versions of Revit?
Well, the licensing's there, so I mean, and I believe it goes back 3 versions. I think it supports 3 versions of the licensing service.
Yes.
So
That's what
I missed the first part of the question.
In essence, we were just talking about if for some reason a client hasn't updated to 2012.
Right, if they're in 2010 or 2011, and since we can't say backwards, do we call you and say, hi, we're working on a project in 2010?
If you need to install an older version, we can absolutely do it, and the licensing's there. It's the same licensing pool regardless of the version. The license is applied to all previous versions on Revit. So we now have 7. Did I mention that to you guys? So we got 2 more? So we have 7 licenses, which moving forward will be great. 7 network licenses for the firm.
Oh, wow.
It's the MEP suite, so we have AutoCAD MEP as well, which we haven't really talked about. But
I don't know if anyone is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's another day. But yeah, it will cover previous versions, so that's not going to be a problem.
Great. Okay, well, that's good to know. The reason I've named your template 2012 is so you know which template you're starting up with. It is not common anymore to not having an architect who's working in a more current version. Watch this on your contracts. Just so you know, it can potentially be a hassle. One thing is that your current template I have it was initially created in 2011, so I have a version of it about the 80% mark of what your full 2012 is in. So worst case scenario, if we do have to start a project in 2011, we have something for you to at least begin it with. That's the thing. You want to probably bring up a template every time there's a new, when Revit 2013 comes out, save a new version of this in this archive off your template. Okay, but everyone found this template? I'm going to hit open. Hit OK. And this fires up. Okay, so from a standardization standpoint, Revit is a phenomenal tool because you can control so many things from the initial template that it starts on. And at any point in time, if you have a newer version, or maybe you've brought a project up to a certain point that now you want to transfer those standards even maybe back into the template, you can. You can easily transfer those project standards. So this is a splash screen. Probably the place that you want to open up every, this will happen automatically when you start a project, this is what will open. And you've seen probably a lot of firms do this. I opened up your Hyundai America headquarters. Gensler had a much larger version of this, somewhat like your processes, what we'll talk about. I generally like to split my monitor, rather split my palettes. There's only really two major palettes. We have something over here called the project browser. That's the central nervous system of your entire project. Okay? This is where everything is housed. Be it all those slices of the model that we were talking about, plan, section, elevation, all of those things. And then down to all of your schedule types, all of those things. It's your sheets, so your whole sheet set is in there. Anybody using Sheet Set Manager in AutoCAD? Those things? Okay. Basically, all of those previous things that were done in AutoCAD, they're all represented in this one thing, which is good.
How you got that?
Oh, what's that?
How did you get that that bar?
Oh, you know what? You have properties.
You got your right hand side page now.
Oh yeah, so that's me. Okay, you want to go to View, if everyone doesn't have this. And those are managed. If you happen to accidentally close these, View to the far right is User Interface, and there's some checked boxes here. You want to check Project Browser and Properties. Those are the two ones that you want to have open. Did that come up?
Also, other silly question: is there any way to get either the HLB or the Horton Lee's gray so you can read the other?
Sure. Bring them forward and make those gray. Sure.
Since you're missing certain letters because they're both black.
Yeah. Right.
Horton Lee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
If we make the HLB, I think, kind of grade.
We could grade that. Sure.
Yeah, I think that's.
Actually, maybe this is a good opportunity to just see what's happening here. So this is actually something that's called a detail component, and it just is a simple little label that can be used throughout the project on your title blocks, things like that. It has a certain size, so it is awfully large. But remember I was talking about families being somewhat external. If you click on this HLB, and let's just all run through it, so this will be good. You click on that, it all kind of acts like one object. That's because it is really one object. If you ever want to go access that external family and go see what's going on under the hood, hit Edit Family up in the upper ribbon, a little bit to the right. Edit Family. You would do this for lighting fixtures, you would do this for everything. Okay, now you should be able to access the text. Now this is still one block.
I think because I gave you it as one.
It's fine, we'll explode it down. This is a good thing because anytime you want to bring in AutoCAD data, there's a certain process that you'll want to go through. It's a purging process, a cleaning process. You want to do.
I have them as separate files if we need, but.
Oh no, this
And
is
also,
fun.
Can you? Cause the only. So the way that we manipulated, for instance, the color, like we had the gray and the black, and then the green and the black, was by layers. Is that the same kind of thing here, where we put them in different layers and then made that layer a certain color?
Yeah, you could certainly still get to things that way. It's not really as critical. It's probably going to be done more in text types. And I haven't exploded this yet, but there's an explode button up here. We're going to do a full explode, and let's see. It handles CAD data very, very well. The one thing you need to be careful about is that it can pollute a drawing, it can pollute a Revit model. So always try to do any AutoCAD exploding externally, like in a Revit family like this. Don't ever bring CAD data or import CAD data directly in. We'll actually go through that process of linking rather than importing. So see, when you click on some of that exploded geometry, you actually see that what comes up is on the properties part. And this is going to be inherent all the way through Revit, whether we're in the project. When you select an object, its properties will come up. In this case, it's a detail item. Two types of parameters. We're going to talk about instance parameters and type parameters. Just roll with me on this. We're going to hit Edit Type.
Sorry, where is that?
Edit Type after you selected one of the pieces of geometry. In this case, I'm going to do the small letters. And I hit Edit Type, which was in the properties.
Pull down later in the properties.
And we're going to change the color there. We're going to change that color from black to, let's just do a lighter gray. We have to hit OK twice to get out. Does anyone do any website creation? CSS or anything like that? It's like styles. It's all governed by styles. So I knew that whole line of text was the same style just because it was created probably in AutoCAD, something like that. Check this out. Hit Load into Project. Okay, look what pops up. It's asking us, it's saying, hey, you're trying to load something that's already in here, in this template, or in my file. Do you want to overwrite the version, or do you just want to overwrite some of its parameter values? Rarely do you do the second option. You normally want to do the upper one, which, click on that, overwrite the existing version. There we go.
And in doing that, we haven't changed the
template.
Original that you had done. We would have to go back to the screen that we were just at and actually save.
You are exactly correct.
Okay.
One thing we're going to do, hit Control and Tab. That cycles you through any windows that are open. Okay, here we are. I'm going to go back to that family that we had open. One thing that you have to remember in Revit is that once you open a view or you open something, it stays open, for better or for worse. So you have to go back and you have to close this, otherwise it remains open. And hit X. It says, do you want to save changes to your HLB logo? Just for the fun of it, hit yes. It's going to prompt us where we want to save that. In this case, I will save it to our Revit training location. And actually, maybe I'll just save one version. When you're saving a family, down here at Control, where I'm seeing Options, this is where you control the number of backups. Okay? All those types of things for that file. Revit's going to automatically save a series of backups for every file, be it a project or a family. Here we're saying, I normally just do one. So watch this really fast. Okay. Everyone's back in the project. You no need to save yours to that same location. We're going to redefine yours.
I just had a quick question. When you make that change from like 3 to 1 or whatever, Is that specific to this computer and it handles all projects, or is that just specific to that file?
To that file.
Okay.
To that file that we just saved.
Okay.
Yep. Go back to your projects and hit undo a few times. Go back to the original all black version. Let's do a few Control Z's. Okay. I'm going to show you how you redefine. We're going to redefine your version of this through the one that I've saved. Okay. So in this central nervous system, the project browser, we have families actually are shown here. They're represented. Every block that's in the project, all the content is actually also housed within the project browser. Okay, so here we are. We see a bunch of model categories. That's really what it comes down to. Revit is, as we cut up that model, we need to sort it. You know, what is a piece of furniture? It's representing a real world object. You have to call it furniture. There are model categories for everything. Structural columns, you know, ductwork, all different kinds of lighting fixtures, lighting devices, fire alarms. They have their own category. And it's funny when you start to chop up the built world in this way, you realize just how simple it really is. It's really not that complex. You know, 20 or so model categories, and you have most of most of everything covered. Where we're concerned, and we're going to look, is detail items. Right there, I want to expand detail items. I'm using the little plus and minus box next to it. I expanded detail items, and look at that, that HLB logo detail component. See that? I want you to right-click on that, the heading for HLB logo detail component, and look at reload. Hit reload. It will prompt you for a location. Go browse to that location on the R drive in our training files. And then you should be able to load it in. There's your updated version. When you're using lighting fixtures and you're doing lighting fixtures, it won't differ at all. Exact same process. That's the nice thing about Revit, is it's consistent. The tool is just so consistent. It works how we think as designers and how we want to document, but it's just so consistent across the board. Every task is done the same way, which is nice, right? Consistency is certainly makes life easier. So I don't know if this is the right gray. We can reverse this, or however it needs to happen to match your standard.
Well, I think it's nice too. We can add color. We can.
Absolutely.
I think we can make this, look.
Because
it is.
Be consistent.
We do.
Yeah.
But I think, one of the things that we've talked about on our calls is a lot of our templates and title blocks and whatever it may be look very old. They don't have kind of that flash of what we consider to be our firm, being that upper tier. And I think that adding that color or adding something unique to it, I think helps.
Yeah.
And so especially because this is what clients see for projects. When we send it to them, this should be the welcoming screen.
Yep.
So, it's certainly something for us to think about how we want that to look. And
I would agree. I think sometimes, like the Gensler project, when we open up the Hyundai America, there's, some choose to do really large screens. They're welcome screens. Others do just, and that, you embellish it. It could just be simply project name.
It's a great day at HLB.
What's this?
It's a great day at HLB.
Yeah.
Only how he gets it for me.
Oh, sorry.
One of the things I just wanted to bring up, which I don't know that you're aware of, is that we have a Revit team, as you are very much aware of. We also have several other teams that are getting quickly into motion. One of which is our sort of InDesign team.
Oh, wow.
But InDesign really meaning all of the Adobe suite, so Photoshop, Illustrator, so on and so forth. So as soon as I heard template design that clicked in, and I think that I know that one of our other groups is asking for the InDesign group to help them build templates, look and feel, a little bit more panache as opposed to a little bit, bland. And I think there's an opportunity there for some collaboration with the InDesign team to do some art. Maybe, I don't necessarily think artistic things, but just using those tools.
And we have given Peter updated title blocks that are
Correct.
different, much different. Not much, but they're much nicer, I think, at least, than our old title blocks. They definitely could use probably still some tweaking, but I think it's a huge step forward to where we were.
I thought they
Well,
were
I
great.
think that, Stacy, you had mentioned that you're on the InDesign team, or is that type of
So I looked at Stacy.
So I mean, I think that helps bridge the two, because
I
we
also
do
know
want
that
consistency.
Impact, there's a logo discussion going on as well.
Right, and Lindsay is part of the AB3 group, which is asking InDesign to do the AGI, the InDesign, the templates for InDesign for calculations.
So in essence, they'll take care of it.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, it's something that we can go to them because they are going to be focusing on those programs.
Yes.
And if they don't already have the, so like what you said earlier, if they don't already have the answers, that would be a good team to go get those answers about making things look and feel better.
Sure.
So, but I think maybe perhaps if we give them our templates and
Where we
kind
are.
of start from there, since we have kind of updated already,
Yeah.
and then go from there. And I do know that there's a larger discussion about the logo going on.
Yeah.
I think the irony of it all is that it actually started with the InDesign's request for a rasterized logo,
Oh, really?
which then brought it back here. So-
Oh, because my first request for a
Vectorized.
vectorized
Oh,
logo
vectorized. I'm sorry.
came from Peter.
Yeah.
And we actually, right before it came from Peter, it actually came from the two of us working on the title block and wanting to add a logo and being like, oh,
It wasn't.
geez, how do we do that?
That's like
Which opened up a hall. So we do now have one, which I gave to Peter, and I can give, but it does not have the haze effect, right? Because it's hard to have that translate into.
Yeah.
That was your first
Little
question.
bunch of
That was your
dots.
first
Yeah.
question. You were like, "How did you do the haze?" And I was like, "We didn't." That's how I did it. We didn't do it.
I just was thinking either they spent a lot of time, clicking a lot.
Yeah, no, we did not do it. We didn't even think about attempting it.
Smart. Oh.
So.
But no, this is
But-
cool. I think we see this a lot. Like the need for consistent branding. And you want the same thing coming out the doors, looking the same once it hits the street.
Sure.
I agree. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to overhaul and update.
Yeah, we definitely agree. That's the nice thing about this being an external object too. Someone can work on it there, and then you can populate projects with it if you want to quickly update.
And can I ask, in this case, with the 4 offices, with something that you could change it this easily, are we going to have this template live in the central to the 4 offices, or are we going to have the templates live on individual servers, and then if I make a change, for instance, to it, it's only changed the Boston template, and then a year from now, my template looks significantly different than your template, or
I have a feeling Mike
LA's
might
template?
he might come running back in here, but I know that my dream is is that
Can you sit over here?
I'm working on something in there.
there's
but
a chair right
Yeah, I
here,
know.
like,
I will come join you guys. Yeah.
what I'd love to see, which I think we've talked about from an IT perspective, is certainly with regards to templates, energy codes, certain things like that, lead reference guides,
Central reference.
having
Yes.
a central place. So
agreed.
that would be my hope. Right now,
That's
we're
my fear is that
you start with
exactly
something.
that's my fear. Is that a year from now, Boston's template's gonna look different than New York's, and different than LA's, and different than San Francisco's. Because we're all gonna go, oh, you know what? I wish we could just tweak this a little bit,
Yeah.
and then you multiply that 4 years from now,
Yeah.
and it's gone. We're completely
I
different
mean,
again.
yeah, I think that we as a team need to try and keep control as much as possible as as other people's hands start touching it, that we need to try and stay aware of keeping it consistent. But hopefully
Just to
we get to
capitalize his time. Should we write down these topics that we can talk at dinner about, so that we're not kind of deferring.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, bud.
Yeah. It's a good idea. Just to maybe close that thought up, This idea of standardization, something you can revisit every year. If all the firms have their own version of a template sitting out there, there's no reason you can't reconvene at the end of every year and make a conforming template and start the whole process over again. Or every time a new project is started, it's out of your hands to some degree, because that whole project is independent of the template. Yes, those families are tied back to another location potentially, but it doesn't mean that someone couldn't make their own version of this logo within that project, just that one project, and it would never be saved back and overwriting the original one. So it's somewhat out of your hands with every project.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
It's kind of tying back into opening up the original template in its 2012, and I hope this isn't a silly question, but do we need to update our families with every version of Revit as well, or the family?
The family
No.
get moved with the updated template?
I'm just wondering, can we use the families that have been created for 2012?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Forward migration is not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just can't go backward.
No, and what's interesting, there's so much content that's been created out there. You'll go seek out maybe a lighting fixture, you'll load it in, you'll get a little pop-up window that says, oh, this file is being upgraded to your current version. Yeah, no, that's a really good question though. It's safe going forward.
Can
Yes.
I also ask, if we close our program and reopen that template, would our logo look like this, or would it be the all black one? Did we just change the template, or did we just change our file?
Exactly right, you just changed your file.
Okay.
Yep, great distinction, because I guess that's the point about once you start a project with a template, it's kind of out of your hands.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could save it back to the template
Okay,
eventually.
but we haven't. What
You
we
have
just
it.
did, we have not saved it back to.
You've only affected your one project.
Okay.
Yeah. That template's just that base starting point.
Right.
Yeah, but that great distinction. So, in this project browser, this central nervous system of some of the inner workings of Revit, but then also just the basics of the way that your project is organized and operating, there are several things. And I try to collapse things down as much as I can. In that, I'll try to collapse as much as I can. A Revit project that gets large, especially, I'm sure Michael can attest to this, is you have so many views. The result, your project browser will be a mile long, and you just have to figure out ways to sort that. Already, your team learned how to do that with a sorting parameter on your views. Currently, you're being sorted by 3 different types of criteria. It is design, documentation, and export. Those definitions can be changed, but if we expand those, we see that there are several types of views that are actually sitting under each one. Because the biggest thing that we need to do in Revit is be careful that we don't move, say, a view. Like, in AutoCAD, if you have a viewport set up for, on a sheet, you want to lock that viewport sometimes. You don't want it to move. Same issue here with views, because we can cut this model as many times as we want to. We may have 100 versions of level 1. You're just looking at it different ways. Maybe there are different cut planes. Maybe there are different model categories being filtered out. But in general, they're being used for different things. In Revit, what we try to do is we set up a series of documentation views. Those are the views that go onto a sheet. And we try to do as little messing with those as we can. When we're doing our day-to-day work in a model, we generally want to be doing it within the design views. That's your day-to-day work, as much as possible. And that's because the documentation views, it's so critical that those hold their parameters. We don't want them to grow and shrink or move or something to be changed in them. We also have an export version. May or may not be useful to you. You may find that this is just deleted out of most of your projects because you don't end up using it. That's if you're trying to share it with someone and export out a CAD file, maybe that's cleaned up. If we do a cleaned up floor plan. yet again, it's not ever ending up on a sheet.
So to circle back, the documentation is that's meant to be our final product that someone would see if they were,
Yeah.
if we were issuing a sheet.
Yeah.
That's what they would see, you know, if they had a hard copy of the project.
Correct.
documents. That would be.
But that doesn't live under sheets? So
It does. It does. And we actually, if we expand sheets here, there you'll see that there's also several types of sheets that we can develop.
Okay, so I'm sorry. If we go into views, so design
Yep.
is what we do our day-to-day.
Day-to-day work in, correct?
Documentation,
Yeah, that's the one that you're going to do. You'll do some tagging in there, but it is the one that you generally want to stay out of. That's the one that doesn't get touched.
Which one? Sorry.
Under anything under documentation. So in this case, that's the one that ends up on the sheet, that documentation view. And we can rename these headings. That they don't have to be design, documentation, and export. I noticed that many firms, I think you all have done this, initially you would number 01, 02, for a variety of reasons. Design and documentation just seems to be a logical way of breaking it up.
so if we're creating a sheet, why don't we reference the design view?
Because you're going to find yourself in a design view sometimes just creating, say, a quick section so you can go find something in the model. You don't necessarily want that to show up everywhere. It's just it may be a section that you're using just to work in. It doesn't necessarily show up in your outputted views. You know, last thing you want is on the sheet when someone prints it out and be like, ooh, what are all these little section marks? That's really what it is. So it'll be in a design view working on a specific work set. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. That you will be making these section cuts on. That's so everyone can utilize Revit to the best of its ability to sit there and kind of look at the model different ways, not necessarily something that's outputted. So we're talking about those organizational parameters. Those are those organizational parameters: design, documentation, export. What defines that? If you click on one of the views, just single click, I'm going to go to this design floor plan level 1 architectural. In the properties bar, you see a lot of information that comes up about that view immediately without having opened it. You could double click on it and open it, but I'm just trying to prove you click on it, a single click in the project browser. You can go to the properties and you can start to go through those properties and see what's there. This is the parameter that is actually guiding how this is categorized. It's categorized as a design plan, and this is a rolling database, so you could make a variety of headings. Watch this. I'm just going to type sketches and hit apply. Look, so it changes. Change that to view usage. Come on. Freezing up. I think the apply. So I changed view usage. I wrote sketches, and it started out a new series of headings for me. Still have design, documentation, export, but I have a whole new grouping here because your browser is being sorted by that parameter. I'm going to go back to view usage, and I'm going to change that back to being a documentation plan, and it resorts. So the whole point here is that as your Revit files become thicker and larger and longer in the project browser, you need to sort frequently. and you need to come up with these methods of sorting. That's by far the easiest one. You know, you may end up doing a series of other view types. So that's just views, and that's a good point. I think Brandon was starting to allude to this. Is the process is making a view. You can slice up that model as many ways as you want to, as many plans, sections, elevations, 3D views as you'd like to see. Each view has its own set scale. It has its method of filtering the model, showing what it wants to show, and then it gets transported onto a sheet. Basically, it's a dragging process. Okay? So only at that point, and this will probably all become even that much clearer about the process of a documentation view going onto a documentation sheet and then outputting from there. But that's really, of your views, maybe 10% of them make it onto sheets. You know, I think that's a critical point. About 10% of the views you will make actually make it onto sheets. Because you can make unlimited cuts and views of that model. Okay, so we were talking a little bit about that sorting parameter, and we're going to go back to families just because there is an awful lot of content in here. Let's go to families, expand those, and expand lighting fixtures. You can see what's there. We've created a series of non-hosted lighting fixtures for you. The virtue of these non-hosted fixtures is that if you have a client who, for some reason, is in AutoCAD, you can still work in Revit. They don't require a ceiling or a wall. They're completely free. They're all going to have the prefix HLB on them because they are custom to you. And they're all fairly generic. You'd utilize these only as a starting point. Further down, though, we have hosted fixtures. And I would love some feedback on this breakdown. Maybe we can, you know, as a later discussion, it's really two groups. HLB fixtures, which are non-hosted, and then the rest are all hosted fixtures. A hosted fixture is going to look for a ceiling or a wall or a floor to attach itself to. Okay, building up that parametric relationship. It's meant to be attached to something. It's looking for a home. That's what all the hosted fixtures will do. And we're going to use those at varying points in time. Okay? Options bar, properties bar. We're going to skip over. Actually, let's do that quickly. I'm thinking type and instance properties. We'll go ahead and use those. Let's double click on one of our views and open that up. Let's open up level 1 RCP in the design category. Okay, blank. A few different things that we have. First, at the bottom of the screen, in that viewport, we have a scale, right? So we have a scale. We have other things like detail level. And this is an interesting thing because we have different detail levels. Coarse, there's a medium, and then a fine. And that's the amount of detail, more so on the architectural side you have to worry about this, but think about it from, say, a plan cut through a wall. Maybe it's a very complex wall assembly. Let's say a brick wall. At coarse, you aren't going to see very much information. It'll just be an inside line and an outside line. That's it. At medium, maybe you see some of the inner layers. Maybe you see the lines representing brick, and then maybe there's some stud work in there, but you don't see much more. But maybe at fine, you actually start to see insulation and hatching on the bricks, and you get a lot more information. So that's Revit's way of keeping the model working quickly, is the detail level that it's trying to show. Keep that in mind. When you are having to navigate an architectural model, watch out for the detail level that's being asked for. Because oftentimes that can slow a project down if you're asking for fine detail and you don't really need it. You're out there at 16th scale or 8th, and you just don't really require it. So be cautious of that. There are, next to that, to the right, we have our graphic display options. I think these are fairly common to any 3D program. Wireframe, hide line. If you want to write down some quick keyboard shortcuts, we'll go through these too. Wireframe, if you need to go to wireframe, is WF. Hidden line is HL. Shaded is SD. Those are the two I find myself using the most.
Can you say that one more time?
Wireframe, WF. Hidden line, HL. And then shaded, SD. I use those commonly. We keep going to our right. We have sun settings. Probably won't use this quite as much. We go furthermore. One more right. And that is the shadows. On, shadows off. We probably won't be using that as much. But the next two are the crop regions. So every viewport has this ability to crop itself down, and you can adjust that crop region. By default, a view in Revit goes to the fullest extents. So it's always going to the extents. But you can say, hey, show me the crop region. So let's actually click on both of those items. I did a ZE for zoom extents. In Revit, you don't need to use the space bar. It's just always going to be 2 letters, and that's it. And it will do the command. So ZE is zoom extents. ZR is zoom region. So this is the crop region showing up. If you select it, you can actually pull it in and out. On very, very large models, we'll utilize this frequently. The crop region is critical for a very, very large building to figure out, okay, how are we going to actually document this thing and get it onto sensible sheets, you know? Okay, we have going back to the bottom of the screen, we have the nifty little pair of sunglasses. Anyone use this yet? Temporary hide isolate. Yeah, really, really helpful tool. We'll get into. And then to the right of that is the light bulb for the what I'm going to call permanent hide isolate. Okay, so sunglasses, temporary hide isolate, and the light bulb is permanent. Difference being the sunglasses, you can select an object in Revit. Maybe you just want to temporarily get it out of your way. Okay, so you can see what you're working on. And in Revit, you're going to find the screen gets cluttered, and you have trouble drilling down and finding what you want to select. You're going to use that frequently. The sunglasses are good because you can just filter down through, and you can say, don't just get this out of my way temporarily. You'll click on that after you've selected an object. You'll click on that, and there's several options that will pop up. There's isolate category, so you can either choose to isolate the object you've selected or to hide the object you've selected. It's temporary. If you close this file and reopened it, it would restore. Okay, so your sunglasses are not permanent. However, the permanent hide isolate is the light bulb there to the right. It's completely permanent. Once you've hidden something in that view, it stays off, and I'll show you how to use that.
What's the difference between isolate and hide?
So, isolating, so let's say you click on a fixture in your plan, and you say isolate just that object. It will show you just that object, and everything else will go away.
Whereas hide will get rid of that object and show everything else.
You got it, yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's nice. Let's drag in a light fixture. Or, yeah, since we haven't gotten into ribbons just yet, let's drag in a light fixture. Let's just pick one of your HLBs. HLB, I'm going to do your linear box. Left click on one of those sizes, left click, hold down, and drag it into the drawing area. You know what? I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do a ceiling pendant. Yeah, that one looks like it's still wanting to be hosted. Use the HLB ceiling pendant. I'm going to do your bowl version. Okay, so there's that fixture. It came in. Let's click on it. Okay. We get a few things that pop up. Everyone have a fixture in? Okay. Select it. Look at your properties bar after you've selected this fixture. You see things that are specific just to this one. Meaning, you know, let's say this pendant, you have 10 of them in a project. Maybe they're at different heights, right? Each one of these can have an instance parameter control of what height does it reside at. It's so, as opposed to, if we hit edit type, it's a kind of secondary level of control inside. If I change anything in a type property, it changes all of them. So let's say I have 10 of these fixtures. If I change an instance property, like mounting height, potentially, that's an instance. Whereas if I change lamping, that probably is a type parameter that will change all of those light fixtures in one shot. But it's nice. So there's two layers of properties. One more time. You get in there, you select an object, you have the instance properties immediately available. You hit edit type, and then you go into the type properties, which then control every single one. So for instance, a light fixture, to change its type mark, make it an F2. You would do it right down here. It's a type property. And here's type mark. For that matter, I'll just type F2, hit apply. So for every bowl pendant moving forward of this type, it would always be an F2. That's a type parameter.
So one of the things I don't think we'll touch on now, we'll do when we actually do documentation, but we would be interested in hearing is when we have the second bowl type, that's going to be a different tag, different size, lamping, those type of things. You know, how would we?
How do you handle that?
So that'll be, once we get into the documentation side of things, that'll be one of the things we want to look at.
Cool.
When you're using the same symbol for different types and instances.
Different things. Perfect. Yep. Exactly. The yeah.
Go ahead. You can finish it. Is there? So let's say that this bowl, you know, is that's our F2. Will it show up in the project browser anywhere as the F2? Or how do I know, how does somebody else going into that project know that that's the F2?
Good question. A lot of times you either
You rename
you make a copy and you rename it there. I noticed, I think you had done that for your fixtures on.
Well, that's one of my other questions for the future is that for those projects, whenever I grabbed a fixture within our Revit, you know, with our project folder, I had a separate folder that was Revit, you know, for project-specific fixtures, and I named those types F2, and it had whatever manufacturer information. Yeah. So then when I loaded it into the project, it said F2. Whatever. So that was one of the questions for as we move forward with documentation on how to handle it. But
yeah. Great instinct. That's exactly it. Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems. Is that, how do you start naming this as it does become more specific in a project? Yeah, you very well may rename the family. You can right-click on any one of these, and unfortunately, in this case, all of your ceiling pendants are all within the same family. so it's a little harder to call that an F2. You could right click on the bowl and you can hit rename.
But it would always be listed under ceiling pivots.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Is there a schedule that we could make that would list these are the fixture types and this is the reference, this is the family that it's referencing?
Absolutely.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually happening in the background. The second that we inserted one light fixture, already that, I'm going to call it a roving database. The thing is always tracking model categories and objects in a model. It's already going, which is neat. So that light fixture is being tracked by a schedule. Let's actually go check out one of these schedules and we'll see that it's showing up. Expand your schedules and quantities.
Is there an easy way to navigate through the project browser? Because I just find when I was going through other projects that, like you said, it becomes 5 miles long. And is there an easy way to like expand or quickly move to one group or another?
Really wish there was.
Or even close all of them at once?
Yeah, I know.
Is there any sort of like keyboard command to let just go?
So you just have to do it and
all manual.
Okay.
All manual. I wish. I know those are the types of things I think that Autodesk is really going to have to address. You know. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's not done yet, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. Click on your lighting fixture schedule.
Yeah.
Yay! Remember that bidirectional control? You can change that lighting fixture type mark here, and it would change all of them. So that's a good point. If we want to add in that family and type, that's a very interesting thing. I'm going to show you actually how to control the data that's in this schedule. So we'll actually touch on that when we're doing the documentation side. Is how do we add a data field? Because all we're doing is we're asking Revit to that database to say, hey, let's extract one more piece of data out of model and show it to me in this schedule.
Also, just quickly looking at the clock, we've got about 20 minutes.
Cool.
Still devoted to this section, just in case that controls any of what.
I think we're actually doing really well. We're on to. Is everybody cool so far? Everyone understand? It may not completely gel yet.
While we're in schedules, because this has come up just recently with other people of different age groups in the office, is there a way to?
I'm curious.
Is there a way to zoom in on this view or like make this view bigger in the schedule? So once
That or she gets this close to
so-
our screen.
So once the text height is set, then that's what it is. Okay.
You can. It's really a real shame. I hope this is an improvement that's coming. Is everybody have you ever heard that acronym WYSIWYG?
Yes.
What you see is what you get. This is not WYSIWYG. I would love to see what I was actually. Not until you drag that schedule into a sheet do you really see how it's formatted. There are formatting controls. You can change the header, text size, and all those things. So it can be different, but it's really unfortunate because.
And so we can't make this view any larger.
No.
No.
But if
There
you
will
were
be a
to put
certain
it,
person in this office who will
but if we were to take it
can't
to a
get
sheet,
closer.
We could.
that sheet.
Then
Shows it shows it that is WYSIWYG
So-
and it.
okay.
So then
That's
we'll
fine.
have to do that.
Yeah.
That also gives me more optimism for being able to format our schedule to look,
The way we want.
yes,
because I've only seen it like this.
yes.
Oh,
so
I was
that-
a little scared when I saw this.
Just keep your expectations fairly low. So, the formatting is not great. What it is giving you is the amazing amount of time saving.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's huge activity.
Yes, it
I
is.
just worry about. I feel like one of the things that HLB gives is what we produce is beautiful.
Yeah.
In every sense, well, from obviously the end product, building product, but also our presentations and everything. And so I at least feel that I also want my schedules. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
we may
as
not-
boring as they are. If they can be as also pretty as they could be, I understand Revit's limitations. But if we can, I guess,
Well, maybe
stretch those limitations as much as we can.
maybe we just have to export the data out of here and
Right.
do it.
So however we go about doing it, I at least find that
The
important.
principal topic that I'm curious about that I meant to ask
ahead of time, actually, there's a software called Codebook
Huh.
and another software called Revit.
I've heard of them.
Okay. They're data management programs apparently that you can work offline, and they're optimized to link and filter information into the Revit families.
Oh, interesting.
It's for prettier.
I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. One was Revit was developed by HOK apparently, and
Wow.
on a project in Sweden or something.
Wow.
We have an architect who's using it on a project. And CodeCheck is such a weird name, and I may be getting it wrong, but AECOM, and there's a consulting firm that does training. They've developed that software. They have some sort
I
of,
think it's Codebook,
yeah.
I think.
Oh, not CodeCheck, Codebook,
Yeah.
right.
But, yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. I haven't heard of either one. I know that they have opened up the hood a bit to
Others-
third-party developers.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they need help. Yes, you could export this to